Hindmarch is a fashion designer, a businesswoman behind the namesake brand, synonymous with Britishness and handbags. From starting her label in her teens, today she has over 30 stores globally and has redefined and represented a different side to British fashion. Not the formality we see in Saville Row, not the traditional heritage brand that we see owned by historically brands like Burberry, or the overtly Cool Britannia by brands like Stella McCartney. Anya, in our view, has represented another British quality. The ability to not take oneself too seriously, that British sense of humour, and doing that all while maintaining true craftsmanship. So this multi-award-winning, MBE-holding entrepreneur is also a mother of 5 children. So I guess my first question, Anya, is how the hell do you do it?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. Honestly, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Just to say that listening to your introduction and talking about moments is something that's so relevant, actually, to an entrepreneur. And I know there are mostly entrepreneurs in the room. And I always say that things come of things. And if you do things, things happen. And I was saying last night to someone that when you say that happened, I was so excited that happened. Actually, you realize that because that happened, only because you did that, and only because you did that, and that, and that, and because you actually went out and went to that dinner that one night, it created that moment. So it's so relevant. So it's, I love that idea. How do I do it? Really badly is the answer to your question. Someone very sweetly also talked about, last night at the same dinner, we were talking about latchkey kids tend to be quite good self-starters and entrepreneurs, and I'm rather hoping that my children therefore will have this benefit because they are pretty much self-brought up, truthfully. But you know, I'm not going to pretend it's easy. It's so easy to sit here and go, oh, it was, you know, you start a business, and trust me, there are highs and there are lows. And there's a wonderful creative journey slide, if anyone's ever seen it, which is, I love it. So you're talking about an idea, I love it. It's great, it's amazing. I'm a bit nervous, it's hard, it's difficult, I hate it. I hate myself. And then you go up again. It's okay. Maybe it's all right. Actually, I like it. In fact, I love it. It's amazing. And the truth is, as you hit that dip, it's tough. You know, I'm not going to pretend anything else. And that's when I hit the wine gums. We all have our thing, right? Me, it's the Maynard's wine gums. So we all have our moments. But it's also a privilege, I think, and exciting. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Good. Well, Anya, let's start off with your first moment. So it is a handbag. So this first moment's a handbag, predictably. You recently said a handbag is a mood altering. It gives you the confidence and power that is far too complex for guys to get involved in. So Anya, as a guy, please enlighten me.
I don't know where you got that from. So I think that, I mean, it's a bit like, you know, when you hold a really nice steering wheel in your hands, or you're... you know, you've got a great new pair of trainers. I mean, you know, it's the same thing. That's what interests me in fashion. I mean, I'm not a frilly fashion person. I don't live and die by fashion. And in fact, I think quite the reverse. For me, it's about things that you love to collect, or, you know, like beautiful art, or that make you feel better. I think that's the point. I think it's very confidence-boosting fashion. And it's interesting how you can put on the right shoes, the right outfit, and somehow you stand a bit taller and you smile with your eyes. And they often say actually about actors that when the actor really feels the part, that it's only when they put the shoes of the role on that they actually feel that role. And I think for women and men, because I think men have to think about how they dress now too, which is kind of great actually. It's not just the girls have to stress out about their wardrobes, but it can really give you that boost. I mean, for me, fashion is about forgetting what you're wearing. You feel great, and then you're just you. And that's quite an empowering thing, so that's what excites me about it.
And why in particular was this bag important to you?
So my mum had, you know, she liked nice things, and didn't have loads of them, but liked nice things. And she had this old Gucci, you talk about another brand, but Gucci bag. And I remember thinking how beautiful it was and how beautifully made it was, and I've always been so fascinated by how things are made. And so it was. She gave it to me when I was about 16, and I was allowed to borrow it really more than anything. And I remember how it made me feel, and I think that was really the first moment that I thought, this is interesting to me, and I'm fascinated by this world, and I'd like to know more.
And let's go back to the very beginning. So you're an Essex girl at heart. You grew up in the 70s. You went to Newhall convent school in Essex. You're from an extremely entrepreneurial family. Tell me what it was like growing up in that household.
Well, it was, I think, a real boost in a way because, having a business felt quite natural to me. I think that I lived the highs and the lows of it was my father, really, who started a business when he was very young as well. He lost his dad when he was 16, and I think he was sort of, often I think entrepreneurs have those jolts, actually. There's often, they're quite used to being uncomfortable. So he started a business young, and I remember the mood, as you do as a child. You remember the mood of a family more than anything. When your parents having, something's gone well, they're cock-a-hoop, and it totally affects the family atmosphere as well. And I remember that. I also remember when things weren't going so well. I remember he got a computer system early doors, when it was kind of, it was a whole room, literally a room of this computer system, and it was clearly a massive investment, and it was sort of a pioneering time and sort of the early adopter. And I remember it was going wrong, and I remember equally the sort of sense of stress and panic in the family when that wasn't going to plan. So I think it equips you probably with realizing that there are highs and lows. I think it also means that the word invoice sort of meant something, and I think actually the sort of the graft. I mean, I remember my mother saying that when she was literally going into labour with me, she was still typing an invoice, helping my dad, and without a doubt, I was the baby in the cot under the desk, I'm sure, and so it's just part of the normal growing up thing, which is helpful.
And your father, he became CEO of a big public company. What do you think was the biggest lesson you learnt from him?
Well, he's 80 this year, and he's still on my board, so trust me, he's still very active. I refer to my dad, who I adore, and he's sort of my mentor, I guess, but as my harshest critic, which is actually fair as a description, because he's just wonderfully honest, and actually to have someone who's on your side, who's only there to help you, and I think for all entrepreneurs, it's really a massive advantage to have someone who a parent can give you that time, because there's a vested interest, and obviously a mentor's amazing, a godfather's amazing, a fellow business person, a friend is amazing, but if it's actually someone in your family, then really it's a vested interest for no gain other than trying to help you. So I felt very, very lucky, and he is brutally, and I say that in a very positive way, brutally honest, and yet he's the sort of person I can ring up at 9 o'clock at night and go, like, I'm really worried, I can't solve this problem, and he'll sort of take it and ring me at 8 o'clock the next morning going, you know what I think this, and that is a really lovely thing to have, for sure. You
said he's tough and he's honest. Has there been a moment where he's been incredibly proud, and what was that moment?
Probably never show it. No, I think absolutely. I mean, there's some tough times, obviously, in any business, and he's been very supportive, and there's been some really exciting, lovely things, and he's absolutely, it's a really nice, a very special relationship, actually. I feel very lucky to have that. Yeah. So you weren't the most academic. Did you get pressure from your parents at school to be academic? What were you like? So no, I didn't, and I was very lucky, I think, in a way. I mean, I think I was probably a classic dyslexic. I wonder, of the entrepreneurs in the room, how many, if I was to ask to raise hands, how many are dyslexic in this room? Are there many hands? Yeah? Okay.
You do not want to see the spelling in these
I have seen it, actually. I mean, it's actually, I think we have to look at dyslexia as a by the way, what a terrible name. It's very difficult to spell, dyslexia.
I can't spell it.
It's really mean. And in fact, my son is dyslexic, and just a short aside, he said, I'm starting a business. I went, great. And I said, what is it? And he said, it's a brand, and it's going to be called Nostalgia. And of course, the T-shirts came back printed with Nostaliga. Anyway, so he's now starting this brand, which he's actually going to rename as Dilsexia, because obviously it has the word sex in it. But actually, I think it's a tough word. But so I think that, therefore, entrepreneurs tend to not do terribly well in the classroom. They tend to also be quite impatient. I mean, I want to get on. I know you left school at 16, right? So it's often the way you just want to kind of crack on and get going. So, but luckily enough, I didn't have the pressure I think, they were sort of broader minded than that, luckily. So it was okay. So
let's move on to your second moment, which is still at school. And there are these two. Who are they?
So these are the Emmanuels, which you're probably all too young to even remember. They designed Princess Diana's wedding dress. And there was an old girl from school who was at IMG, and she was managing the Emmanuels. And she came back to talk to us at school. I think I probably was about 16 or 17. And they talked about, or she talked about fashion. And it just made me think that's what I want to do. I know that's what I want to do. And as a consequence, I literally went back to my desk and I
love
drew.
this story.
I drew a shop with my name on. I mean, arrogant. And you have to be a little bit arrogant to have your own business, actually, I think, actually. Not in a nasty way, but you have to kind of think, I can do this. And I drew that shop, and it had handbags in it. So I knew that's what I wanted. And that, I mean, we'll talk about creative visualization later, but I think it's very important often to have that clear idea of what you want to do.
I mean, you're a 15, 16-year-old girl at the time. You've watched these guys come into school, talk about this. You've gone back and you've drawn this shop. Did you keep this private? Was this sort of a secret, or did you go out and tell everyone?
Can't remember, it's a long time ago. I can't really remember. I think that I kind of knew at that point that, I mean, there was a very particular time in the UK, really, of businesses starting. And so I think that there was, I think I probably was pretty clear, yes, because that ended up with me then going to Florence and knowing that I wanted to be immersed in that world of leather and fashion and to kind of really get under the skin.
And let's actually move then on to moment number 3. So you're 19, you're not a typical teenager, you're not going on a trip post your studies. You're not that standard teenager. First of all, it isn't your independence. You're not going to find yourself. From what you've just said, it was pretty clear that you knew in many ways who you were and what you were looking for. What was going through your head when you arrived in Florence?
Well, I don't think I've ever really found myself. Maybe one day I might. I was pretty clear about what I wanted to do, actually. And there was a sort of a sense of lots of stuff going on in the UK at the time. People were starting businesses. There was a sort of momentum. And I knew that I wanted to go and start a brand. It was very clear it was a brand. I wanted to design. I wanted to, really get on. And I knew that Florence was the sort of home of that world. And I just wanted to be in it, actually. I mean, probably with retrospect, it might have been, good had I gone to design college. But then I wasn't particularly arty either. I mean, I think I'm creative, but at school in those days, if you were arty, you had to be able to draw, and actually I'm really bad at drawing. So it didn't sort of, I didn't know quite where to fit, but I knew that was my home, really.
So one, it's not a mistake you chose Florence, and then while you're in Florence, you find a bag.
So I was there. I mean, I started off. Not many offers from university, obviously, and so I actually I don't think I even actually applied to universities in all fairness. But I started in Florence, and I thought I'll do a language course, at least understand Italian, and therefore have an excuse to kind of just be there and have a sort of structure to my day. So I did 2 months of doing that, and very quickly I was sort of fascinated by the markets and I managed to once get into the Gucci sample room. Actually, I managed to have, you just find your way into all those leather houses. And I ended up seeing a bag, and people weren't travelling as much in those days. It was more expensive to travel. And I saw a bag that was a drawstring duffel bag that's kind of every cool Italian girl was wearing. In the way that in those days, what people wore in Italy was different from what people wore in London, whereas it's much more sort of the same these days in some ways, which is rather sad actually. But I saw this bag and I thought it was great, and so I found a factory, literally by going through the yellow pages, the pagine gialle, and I contacted several factories, quite a lot of sort of false starts, obviously, and finally found a factory who would make my design. And I had some samples made and took them back to London. And I had a friend of a friend who had a stepmother who worked in the offers department of Harper's and Queen, as it was then, which is now Harper's Bazaar. And they had this monthly offer at the back, which is a full page, called the Harper's Bazaar offer, which is the only way I knew to get to market, funny enough, which wasn't via retail. And so they ran the bag in that offer. I remember getting my logo done at the time and trying to find someone who could make me a die stamp, as it was in those days, and actually send it to the factory to get my logo put on the bags just in time before they made them. And then I think we sold 500 and I made £7,000 profit, and I thought, to hell with university, really. It's the beginning of it.
Amazing. But what I love about the way you tell that story, Anya, is you're sort of like, well, I went to Florence, I found a bag, and I assume it wasn't just due to curiosity, you were out looking for one. I met with some factories, and you sort of forget that at the time you were like a 19-year-old girl going out and negotiating with these factories, and it's a very different time then, right? First of all, a young person going out and setting up a business. Second of all, going in, and I guess how many factories did you even meet with? Was it just the one?
No, several actually, and some of them were full starts where you ended up meeting them in a sort of piano bar or God knows what. But I mean, I think the thing is you have to be I think actually being young is an advantage, and actually I think a lot of entrepreneurs do start young because you're also just quite naive. You just think, why not? You know, whereas I think the moment you've kind of got a mortgage and 3 kids, it's harder to take that risk, probably. You have to be a bit precocious. I don't think that means you have to be nasty, but I think you have to be slightly like, why couldn't I? And, you know, I'm quite interested in where that comes from as a mum. You know, you kind of think, what gives people, I suppose, the kind of permission to go and to try things and make mistakes, which is very important.
What do you think did give you that confidence?
I think probably, as I said earlier, being surrounded by sort of businesses. You know, literally everyone in my family had a business, so I could sort of see the highs and lows and know that you could have a few goes and you might get it wrong and you keep going. And I don't know, it's probably a makeup of you know, being liked, you know, by my parents. Who knows what it is? What gives you the confidence to go out and do that? And it's something that's, you know, sort of something that I'm quite keen to replicate with my kids. But anyway, it was an exciting time, and I think being young was good. I learnt a lot.
You just said though that the obstacles you sort of didn't see, and that meant that you could overcome them. For that time, you were a female going out to set up a business. When you think about how that's discussed now, how there's a real discussion around female entrepreneurship and the sort of Me Too movement. Do you think that being a woman ever held you back in business or any of those discussions?
No, honestly. And you know what? I like being a woman. I don't want to. I don't want to be a man. And in some ways, you know, clearly there are you know, things have gone wrong, and that needs to be corrected. You know, Me Too, absolutely, completely support and understand. But I think sometimes the pendulum can sort of overswing, and you know, I almost don't want it to be equal. I want it to be fair, but I want women to be women and men to be men in some way, or for everyone to be who they want to be. You know, I don't want to be sort of forced that we're all the sort of the same in many ways. So I have never found it a problem. It's been a couple of meetings actually over the years where, you know, in certain cultures that I find people are talking to my husband more than to me. Well, that's fine. Sometimes in certain sectors, actually, sometimes in the sort of finance world, you'll find that again, that people might talk to my husband more than me. But you just have to kind of push on and just, you know, be you, I think. So no, I haven't found it a big problem. But I think in fashion, it's not such an issue, probably.
And talking about powerful women, your next moment, it's the 1980s. Thatcher is the first female who has come to power, and you've said publicly that you admired and embraced sort of Thatcherism. How big a part did that play in your success?
Well, I mean, I know she's Marmite, right? But she was sort of amazing for me because, you know, we went from this sort of slightly kind of grey UK where it was all a bit sort of grisly to a time when I think there was this movement, this momentum to breaking out and starting businesses, and this sense of you can do it, whoever you are, and whatever your age, actually just get going. And if you get a momentum, and I think there's definitely one now with this new digital opportunity that, you know, who wants to go and sit and do a boring job? You can actually start your own app, you can start your own business, you can get going, you can sit at home and do it for as we were talking earlier. You know, you can get developers, you can just crack on. And so I think she started a movement then that I'm sort of seeing again now, actually, and so it was quite pivotal. Also, there was all the privatisation. I remember we were all buying, you know, shares in our lunch hour. There was a sense that you could get involved.
We were all buying shares in our lunch hour.
At my Catholic convent, we were. It was a bit sad, isn't it? But you know, there was this.
That might have been a sign of where you might be heading.
Honestly, in 1980, whatever it was, there was definitely a sense that you could be involved, you could make a difference. You know, so and a lot of businesses were started at that time, and Carphone Warehouse, you know, Pret a Manger, all those businesses that you see now that are quite big. Everyone sort of started together. So I think it was quite a powerful time.
But ultimately, it was also a very difficult time, right, for Britain. It was divided. I think people were discussing Europe every day. It was losing its place in the world. I mean, it sounds actually much like today. What do you think of our second female Prime Minister? I'm not going to go there too much, actually. I think we shouldn't get too into politics. I think she's working unbelievably hard. I really do. And you know what? I look at her age, with her diabetes, and she's there. I mean, it's pretty impressive. You know, I don't want to get too much into politics tonight because it divides my family, let alone an audience. I mean, quite literally. But you know what? I think we'll be okay. Well, you've said that Thatcher turned previously Britain from doom and gloom into hope Britain.
Yeah.
What do you think we need today?
I just think we need to crack on. What I would like is to have an answer either way. I honestly don't care which way, frankly. I think we'll be fine. And I think that, we'll work around the problems. I think we're a creative country, and I think we're quite used to being on our own. We're an island people. I think we will find our way through all the things we need to do, and I think we're good people. So I just would like it resolved, actually. I think we all would, because for business, I think the worst thing is indecision and uncertainty. And if you like it on that basis, if that is the case, then probably the worst moment is now.
Yeah.
And so we're all okay, right? Every restaurant seems to be quite full. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't challenges, and we're in London, which is different, but I think that, we just want to crack on and get an answer.
I also think it's quite an entrepreneurial way of looking at it. A lot of entrepreneurs that I've spoken to are now going, okay, look, there will be an opportunity, let's find a way out of this, versus sort of rediscussing the past. But let's look at moment number 5. So you draw a picture at 16, that picture is of this store, you go to Florence on a mission, you get a factory in Italy to manufacture your bags, you convince this friend to put the advert in and make a profit, and you then have an issue with the factory and you have to move the factory back to Hackney because I think they sort of go around you and they copy you. And with all of this, you end up still finding a way and launching the store, your first store, right here in London. Tell us about this store and the feeling when you first opened it.
Well, it was a first floor store because I couldn't afford a ground floor store.
This is a very grainy picture.
Yeah, I
mean, this is all we had.
So I think it was 1993, and I had built up a wholesale business really by this point, and we were selling to quite a lot of stores around the world, a lot of exporting. We exported really from very early on, which was great. A lot to the States, to Barney's, Bergdorf's, all those sort of stores around the world, and it felt time to have a little store which really gave us a lovely way to sort of showcase, if you like, the world of. So we could sort of really decorate it how we wanted, which of course once you have a physical space, it's quite good because then if you actually open up more stores across the world or you have a concession, you actually have a sort of a world, you have an interior shop fit. And all those things I really wasn't thinking about. It was just quite sort of instinctive in a way. So this was upstairs at number 91 Walton Street. And what was lovely about having a store for the first time was that you met your customers, because actually when you wholesale, there's always, you never actually get to hear the feedback, and actually that direct feedback is incredibly important. So I really not only got the feedback, but I also managed to build up a really nice group of customers, and I loved those days. Actually, they were exciting days.
And was there something in particular about like the experience you wanted to create, or sort of what you had in your mind before you brought it to life?
Well, it was just a little atelier almost, because we've always done quite a lot of bespoke work as well. So things I love the idea that actually luxury should be about stories actually, and about what you want, not just about a brand, because that's what luxury always was. Actually, it's very sort of, it's in a way the word luxury has been quite misused, I think, for the last few years. But so I really wanted to have a little atelier where we could meet people with that personalised and bespoke experience, and it just felt like the next step, really, to sort of, and what was lovely is we had so many interesting people up that little staircase, and it was a rickety staircase, and we just had really interesting groups of models and royalty and all sorts of people. So you really kind of got to build a tribe of customers, which was really a big advantage.
We'll come back to that in a moment. And on the store, if you were a 20-year-old today setting your business up again like you were at this moment, would a store be still the thing that you do? I'm really crossing my fingers here.
It is. I mean, just sort of pausing on that a second. Truthfully, yes and no. So, I mean, we have now, I'm not sure how many stores we have, sort of, 30, 40, whatever number of stores it is now. And the plan was always to go to 80 and then to 120 and to kind of keep growing around the world. And truthfully, I think that cookie cutter kind of stores that are all the same, which was absolutely the model,
100%.
Is just completely unmodern. It's not how I want to shop. It makes no sense. I mean, honestly speaking, I want to buy as much as I can online. I mean, I would buy everything from peanut butter to toothpaste online because it's just easy. We're time poor ridiculously, but we all are. So I think your purchasing to be quite transactional. I think we want our shopping to be quite social and to be quite experiential. I know it's a word that's kind of overused now, experiential, but and so I think that there's going to be a whole new approach. So would I still have that little store? Possibly yes, because in a funny way it was quite experiential, and it was our first touch point, and it was the first way of explaining the world. Would I then go on to open up sort of lots and lots of stores all over the world and continue to do so? No, absolutely not. And I'm quite envious of my kids who are starting businesses with one product, with a website that they can launch for £200, where they have Instagram, where they're not booking any advertising space, and it's just a very clear message.
Well, it's sometimes funny how we lose our way, because I think what you were saying in terms of retail in general, because what you were saying at the beginning with, and you've spoken a lot about travel and how you wanted to go to these different places and discover new things, that it's quite funny that when we take brands to different cities, we replicate and do it the exact same way versus doing it in that unique.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, what I love is saying I found this perfume, I found it in Tangier, and it's special to me. That's luxury. That's luxury.
It's a souvenir of the
absolutely, and it has a story to it. And I think that, when I remember seeing my husband's suitcase, it was his grandfather's suitcase, and I said, "It's so beautiful, it's so lovely, but it looks like it was specially made. But why is it so wide?" And it's so wide because he had really big feet, and he had to fit his shoes in that suitcase. Very good sign, obviously. But the point is that there's a story about that case which makes it special, and that's luxurious, I think. And so I think that cookie cutter thing is no longer that. So it's really how to find. I mean, we are actively, closing stores, and that's quite hard to do. And it took me a while to kind of be okay about that. But actually, I really feel that there's going to be a sort of the right number of the right stores where I feel we can have somewhere where people can go. Touch points are important, but I think that we need to animate. We need to do things that are focused, not just the sort of a bit of everything. Where and that's why I think the pop-up idea, the ability to go somewhere for a week or for 3 months, is just absolutely the modern way, no question.
Well, it's about creating those moments, right? So going on to the next moment, around the same time you've just launched your store, everything's taking off. You meet your future husband at a dinner party. You've often said that it was love at first sight. How did you know?
Well, God, I would never tell him that. Obviously, it was actually weirdly. I mean, he's 12 years older than me, and he was a widower with 3 children, aged 1, 3, and 4. So that's why I'm a mother of 5, sort of by default a bit. And then we had 2 more. So it was, it was not the obvious route. Actually, I was 25, and so, and yet when I met him, I kind of knew, just because you just know, don't you, sometimes he's just a really nice man who doesn't take me very seriously and who makes me laugh. So that was all good. We started working together about when we were expecting our first child, actually, and we both had our own businesses. We were both racing around the world and meeting in Japan, and we were exhausted, and these poor 3 neglected children, not neglected, but 3 children. It was really tough trying to manage it all. Probably a bit neglected, in all fairness. But they've come out okay. It's all right. We got there in the end. When we were expecting our first child together, it was all getting too much. I think I was getting to the stage where, we were, I was designing and all the supply chain and all the, distribution, and it was all kind of growing. So we decided to focus on one business, and so he joined AH when I was had my 2 weeks, maybe not quite 2 weeks, maternity leave, and it's been lovely. I mean, it's been lovely for me. I don't know how it is for him. Sometimes I think it's more fun. I mean, it's like being with my best friend all day, really, but. In fact, we just done a business trip together for 4 days, and he's, as lovely as is equally annoying. It's that lovely thing when you're with someone you know really well. But we have a really nice time, actually.
But I think a lot of people, I mean, first of all, 25 and taking on sort of free and adopting free children is huge, and I imagine a massive feat on top of running a business at that time. But working with your husband, I imagine many people in the audience will think is an even bigger challenge. How did you manage to get that work-life balance right when you're
What's
also...
that? What do you mean? There was a real moment, talking of moments, when we decided to do it, because it was frightening. A, because then the business was, we were both depending on the business, so there was no sort of, backup. And of course, B, because if it goes wrong, that's scary. You're risking a lot, especially when there are lots of kids involved. So it was quite a big thing, but it was so exciting, the idea that we could do it together. Partly, I think, because also I wanted to, his skill set was much more the sort of business side, the finance side, and the business development side, and probably mine was more the creative, even though I like both, actually. But it was having someone in to my other baby, which is my business, which was, anyone who runs a business knows it is absolutely your passion. And so someone to share that with me, and who I totally trusted, and we could sort of share that journey together. And we often have those moments where we're sitting in a lawyer's office and we're about to sign something really exciting, and you're like, and it's quite fun to do that with your husband. It's really nice, actually, as opposed to with a colleague. So, but it's a risk. I think that some of the things we found are that you have to try to treat your husband in a work situation as respectfully as you would a colleague. And I remember once, it's probably oversharing, but I remember once we were on one of the very first business trips, and we were with our sort of production team. I think we were walking through sort of Heathrow Airport, and I just went, I'm just going to go and have a pee. And he went, oh, leaking like a sieve, are we? And I was like, hang on, we've got to have some boundaries here. This is not, so, you have to sort of slightly kind of impose some rules. But equally, I kind of think that actually the team at work loved the fact that he just rips the piss out of me the whole time. And it's, it's sort of, if ever we have a sort of cross moment, they're always going, here we go again. So, it adds a bit of sort of family sort of atmosphere. But, I also think that when we go on holiday, if we were to do a 2-week holiday together, that would probably be too much. I mean, I know what he had for lunch every single day last week. So we're better on holiday with friends,
I keep chuckling because my parents work together and have worked together for 25 years. And you could definitely see the conversations coming home and not that work-life balance.
Sorry, I didn't answer that question. We have no work-life balance. I mean, he would say there's none. I would say I try, but we don't. It is all merged.
And look, for entrepreneurs in the audience that are going, everyone at the moment's talking about balance. They're talking about these things. Obviously, it is important, but as an entrepreneur, as someone doing what you've done, how do you get that balance, or do you accept that it isn't a thing and that it has to be a connection? It has to be a circle, so to speak.
Well, I think it's really important to look after ourselves, actually, and there have been moments when I have been overwrought. I don't know what the technical term would be, but, where I've just been burnt out, exhausted, where sometimes you get to the stage where the weekend isn't enough to kind of to bottom out your exhaustion. And I think, certainly with, lots of small kids, and there was a point where we had 5 different schools on the go, and that's 5 parents' meetings and 5 carol concerts, it's where it's a lot. And when you've got some big thing going on at work, and it's just you can get kind of, and I used to get a sort of panic breathing, when I was really, really sort of stressed. So you have to find ways to calm down and to kind of manage. Obviously, wine is one of those, but it's not one that I recommend, but it can work. I think lots of just laughter with friends and just getting a sort of nothing matters that much. Every so often you can go on a holiday where if I can hit that point where I don't care if it all burns down, if you can do that, and every so often you need to touch that point. And actually recently, with this whole brilliant movement towards thinking about mental health, which felt like a very weird term all those years ago, now is absolutely right that we think about taking 5 minutes in the morning maybe just to breathe, and actually to do that properly, to meditate or to just, body scan or whatever it might be. I think that really works, and actually if I'm really jet lagged or really stressed, I really try and do that now, and that's also probably a much better solution to wine, I think.
And how integral has James been to your success?
I mean, he's my rock, and poor thing gets no praise at all, really. But he's a really nice guy, actually. James, you'd like James. Is a really nice guy, and he's amazing because he doesn't need he's very happy to be in the background, which is pretty impressive. So I mean, I'd never admit it, but pretty integral, I would say.
Amazing. So moving on to your next moment, and this is the 7th moment. Your business is like a rocket ship at this moment. The most recognizable face in the world steps out of a car, clutching your bag. What was this like?
Well, pretty exciting. That was the night. That was the divorce night. That was it was the big announcement night. Not that one wants to ever play on anyone's misery. It's a bit like there's just as an aside, we did this lovely crisp packet bag many years later, and if anyone knows, it's this really beautiful thing made out of metal, quite sharp in the corners, beautifully handmade, and we had a big discussion about not making press out of people's misery, because in fact it was thrown from Solange Knowles at Jay-Z in the elevator, and we were like, oh, it's so good, we want to say it's our bag, and we were like, you can't. And in the end we just posted online just a lovely picture of the bag just saying the crisp packet worth fighting for, which was much discussed in the press about marketing campaigns and was it a but so that was a similar moment. But I mean, obviously it's incredible. I'm not a big fan of celebrity, and obviously Princess Diana was not celebrity, she was royalty, but in a way she was absolutely celebrity. It's not something that I've ever really chased, probably wrongly, because it's hugely powerful for a brand. I feel that I don't love celebrity. I always talk about the craftsmen as being the celebrities. They're the people who are the geniuses. But it was an amazing moment. In fact, when she came up my rickety staircase and with no bodyguards, nothing at all, and just walked in, I was so blown away because I thought she was my best friend, because you do, don't you? Because you know her so well. And I made a bit of a fool of myself, actually. Well, I could have literally thought she was my best friend, and then I suddenly pulled back and realised I had to kind of curtsy. It was all a bit sort of, I can't quite remember, it's all a bit embarrassing. But she was charming and humble, and we picked out some colours, and in fact that bag we made for her and many materials and colours became her bag, and she always had a D embroidered on it, and what's lovely now is that her daughters-in-law are all wearing that same bag too, so it's a nice sort of full circle in a way.
And did you guys end up becoming close?
Becoming friends? Princess Diana? No, not really. I mean, that would have been cool, wouldn't it? I knew her brother a bit, but no, not really. But she was very humble and shy. I remember her being quite shy, but incredibly stylish, and she knew the power of her image for sure.
And you spoke about the idea of celebrity and how you've tried to sort of stay away from that. With right now the age of the influencer and sort of every fashion brand seems to rely so heavily on celebrity to sort of flog product. Do you think it's gone too far? What's your thoughts about that at the moment?
Honestly, I think it has, actually. I find it a bit of a turn-off as a customer when it's just, I mean, it has to be authentic, doesn't it? I think that's the point. I think when it's authentic, I think it's very powerful. I think when it's not, when it's clearly bought, I think it's actually a turn-off. And I think what's interesting is that with Instagram now having to, with the influencer having to put ad, that suddenly doesn't feel, it kills it really, doesn't it, in a way. So I think there's going to be quite a big change because of that. I think authenticity is something that's so fundamental to business. I really do. And I think the word brand anyway is so overused. I think that brand should be replaced with the word behaviour, actually. I think that if you can have people behaving and your team is on brand, it sort of naturally and virally sort of communicates. So I think it should be authentic. I think once you start having too many mission statements and things that don't really ring true, you can lose your way, actually.
Not just why you do something, but how you act. So moving on to next moment. And you've spoken just then about not relying on celebrity, and this was not about celebrity. This moment was about a statement. And you ended up creating This Is Not a Plastic Bag. It sold out. There were queues around the world. Where did the idea come from?
I've just completely contradicted myself, because actually I actually did rely on celebrity for this. We actually, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But this was very much a moment in that someone came to talk to us about a book they were launching called Change the World for a Fiver. And it was the first sort of publication I'd seen really that was about the environment and the issue of the environment and our sustainability and how we're all living. And they came to talk to us about some sort of collaboration. And I remember it was a sort of light bulb moment, because I remember thinking we were all struggling with, yes, we know we need to behave more responsibly, but what can we do as individuals? It felt really difficult. We weren't even recycling. It wasn't even a thing. And I remember thinking that actually we could use the power of celebrity in a way that I don't like, the it bag formula as it sort of was then, which is essentially scarcity of product on all the right arms. You just sort of use that formula to promote a message. And very simply, the project was about just raising awareness for the fact that actually, and the one takeout from, so many takeouts, but one really big takeout for me from this project was someone once said to me, if you throw something away, there is no away. Yeah, it's obvious. But actually, if you were to put all the landfill and dig it into your garden, my London garden wouldn't last very long for starters, this problem is not going to go away. And so the idea was to raise awareness of the fact that we were all taking plastic bags. They weren't decomposing. They weren't combustible. We were behaving irresponsibly and putting them all in the bin and shoving them all into landfill. And so that was the simple aim. It went so mad, this project. I mean, I think that is the power of celebrity. So there you go. It does work. But also, I think it was a sort of a zeitgeisty moment in the sense that people just also kind of wanted to try and do something, and this was their way of doing it in a way that felt cool. Because up until then, I think the environment had been a bit sort of brown rice and hairy armpits, if you know what I mean. It hadn't been cool. That's now quite cool, but anyway. So apparently. Yeah. So the idea was that we brought out this bag, which was for £5, in line with the Change the World for a Fiver book. We launched it with all the kind of, what we call the kind of golden circle of stalls, from the sort of Dover Street markets to the Colettes to the, you know, all the cool stalls around the world. And then as a second tier, we launched it with Sainsbury's, because I actually wanted to do it with a supermarket, and they were amazing on this project. And we had a different colour per territory launch, so London was brown and New York was navy and so on. And it went ballistic. I mean, quite literally, 80,000 people queued in the first day for that bag in the UK. And it went on and on and on. People were flying from city to city. I mean, completely not on a message, obviously. And there was a terrible moment when someone actually bought a bag at Sainsbury's and wanted to put it in a plastic bag so it didn't get dirty on the way home. You're like, you've kind of missed the point, love, you know. But of course, as someone said to me with all these things, that you have to crack a few eggs to make an omelette, you know. And so what we achieved with the, I mean, it also went so mad that actually when it launched in Hong Kong and Japan, and when it launched in fact, when in Japan, I was having dinner the night before. I had my son with me, and we were going out to dinner before the launch, which was at 10 o'clock the next morning at Isetan department store. And it was kind of strange because there were these queues all the way around the store and then over the road and around the whole next department, and they were all staying out overnight. And I was like, what's going on? And they were queuing for the bag. And in Taiwan the next week, it closed down the shopping mall, and 30 people ended up in hospital. So it got crazy. So we clearly canned the project at that point. But what it did was it brought it to people's consciousness, and that was the very simple aim of the project, and it was amazing. I feel very proud of that project, actually.
And the things you mentioned about the celebrities on the arms, the people getting hurt, then there was the sort of controversy around where it was manufactured and all these different things.
It was funny enough, it was controversy, absolutely, because what happens, and it's really interesting, so it was such a baptism sort of by fire for me, because, you know, I was young and I hadn't done a political project. Like, it was really political. I mean, I had to go to Number 10 and have breakfast with Gordon Brown, I imagine, on the subject, because it got so kind of big. And once you move from something that's consumer into political, you know, it's just all knives out. So there was so much positive press around it. And then, of course, they wanted to kind of turn, because anything that's front page, they just kind of then want to turn to this sort of different cycle. And we were very upfront. It was made by a completely good factory, audited internationally, that was, you know, absolutely, there was nothing that was wrong with it at all. It was made in China. We couldn't make a bag that we could sell for £5 in the UK, unfortunately. So it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't wrong, and nothing that wasn't utterly transparent. And the aim for awareness was I think we ticked that box, which was really great.
Did you have any expectation that you'd get the positive response of people queuing when you started the project?
Funny enough, actually, I was so worried about the project that we'd actually found someone, because it was a sort of philanthropic kind of project, to if we had an issue that would help me buy them back, because I was so worried that we'd end up with such a stock holding, and so no, I didn't. But, you know, you kind of dare to dream, and then you don't dare, do you? But it was beyond my expectations, for sure.
Amazing. And this was over 10 years ago now. 2 years ago, we signed the Paris Climate Agreement. We've put more CO2 emissions into the atmosphere over the last 2 years than before. You know, we're not moving fast enough, many would argue. What do you think the fashion industry can do today to help us move faster?
Actually, loads. I think that you know, fashion is a vocal industry, so I think it can do lots, and I think, you know, so many of us are doing quite a bit. I think, you know, you can be nanny state, or you can actually get a movement amongst the customers. And the thing that I think will make the biggest difference is if the customer is demanding the change. And I think that they really are beginning to. I mean, inevitably, when you first make this sort of change, it ends up being more expensive. So it's very hard as a business, and we will get that in the room, that, you know, if you then take a hit on your margin to do something more responsible, great, but it is still a hit on your margin, and you're employing people, and we're all juggling a lot. We all know that. So it's very easy to sort of just point a finger at businesses and say they need to do more, but we're also employing people and, you know, doing all the stuff we're doing. So it's quite hard to take that hit. But if people, in the first instance, pay a little bit more, if businesses take a little bit of a hit, and if we then get to the stage where all the supply chain is realizing they're only going to get the orders if they are doing things in the right way, and giving the brands and the designers innovative, sustainable products to choose from, materials and so on, it's going to happen so quick, and it is happening so quickly. So I think it's really moving now, and it's going to take everyone, business to do a bit, the customers to do a bit, and the suppliers to do a bit, but it's motoring now, and I think it really will happen. We have to. I mean, you know, we all know we have to behave in that way. 100%.
So moving on to the next moment. The year's 2007, the financial crisis is looming. You've been at the helm of the business for 20 years. And I guess, Anya, why do we have a picture of a car park?
Well, so I felt quite strongly at this point that I should bring in. So I was the CEO, even though we had a very flat org structure, and clearly my husband was very involved in the business side. And in fact, we used to laugh and say that our management team was a bit like a kibbutz, in the sense at one point we actually even paid ourselves the same, because actually we thought, we're fighting the world. Let's not have any kind of issues internally. Let's just all be paid the same, and let's go out and build this business. And then at one point we had to break out of that, and that was, it's kind of an interesting journey actually, but we did, and all still good friends, which is nice. But there was a moment in a car park when I suddenly have very much one of those moments of thinking it's time to bring in someone from the outside, and for me probably to move back to, I had to make a decision really, either I'm going to stay as CEO or be the creative, and I think to do both was probably going to do a disservice to the business. And so I also felt that, for example, we had grown our business quite a lot through franchises, which was a great way of doing it without too much capex, and so to a certain extent, those territories, whilst we kind of kept trying to really keep them in line, you don't have quite as much control with a franchise as you do when you control the territory yourself. So I felt that, in Japan it was 2 degrees to the left of north, and perhaps in New York it was, 3 degrees to the right, and so on. So I wanted to go back to product and really just sort of drum up the product and kind of get the really stir the pot on the creativity and kind of get going on that front. So I made the decision that it was the right time to bring in a CEO. And I really couldn't decide whether I wanted to be CEO and bring in a creative, or be creative and bring in a CEO. And I felt, and my James decided he didn't want to do that role, because I think he felt it'd be difficult between the two of us to do it. So we decided to bring someone in, and that was sort of a very definite thought I had in the car park, thinking, it's the moment, the business can afford it, let's move to this next stage.
Emotionally, what did that feel like at that moment?
I felt quite grown up in a way, and quite exciting. I mean, I was working unbelievably hard, and I think anyone with their own business in the room will know how hard we all do work. It's 7 days a week. It's all you think about, and so it felt like maybe after 20 years, perhaps, with all these children, perhaps I could, maybe even work, have half a day off a week, or I could have time to focus, just more on the sort of creativity. So it felt exciting.
What did you find when you were CEO the most difficult? And in turn, when you weren't CEO, what did you find most difficult about not being that role?
The most difficult whilst being CEO is the 5 words, which are, can I have a word? And
on a Sunday night by email.
It's a killer, because as we all know, it's people, and when you're growing a business, you can't afford to pay people market rate, so you often have to win them over and retain them, and top talent who you've grown and you've lived and breathed with through I don't know, charm, through whatever you can find your way, making it fun actually. And fun enough, actually, I realised that whilst I was I felt very vulnerable at the time, because I couldn't necessarily give as much as I wanted in terms of salary to these brilliant people, and of course you work on share options, phantom share options, or however you do it, and find ways to sort of entice people to stay. But actually, I realised that in fact the fun you have building a business is actually very exciting for people. And actually, I think probably looking back, I didn't need to feel quite as vulnerable as I felt, and just to share that with the room if anyone's going through that stage. Because actually it is there is no more exciting time, and the people that I've now worked with for 20, 25 years, and some of whom have retired or doing different things, we look back on those days as the most special time of our lives. I mean, quite literally, it was really, really fun. So that's the worst thing about being a CEO. The worst thing about not being a CEO is not being a CEO. I'm going to be honest, because I think if you're used to leading, and if you like your people, it's your family, and I realised that I actually really missed it. I really loved that role, yeah.
And you step away from being CEO, you head into the role of creative director. What changes in the business? What does this give you the opportunity to start doing?
So I really tried not to be that founder that goes and micromanages. The CEO probably did a bit, but I moved wholeheartedly into the studio, and I threw all of my energy. And I'm a great believer that business is just about energy. I always think if you drop a stone into a puddle, you get the ripples, and those ripples are what creates good stuff, actually. And so I just think if you just focus your energy on something, you can really stir the pot, really kind of get it going. And I really did that with the creative at that point. So we launched our first shows, which were really scary. I wanted to do something frightening because actually I really I used to be very, very scared of public speaking. Actually, I couldn't have done this a few years ago. And someone once explained to me that actually when you're frightened, you're actually excited. They're the same emotion, and it really helped unblock that fear for me. So by being excited and scared, you kind of do your best work, I think. So I felt that the shows were a good format for me to have that moment when you're there with all those people who are a bit vulnerable, so it really pushes you to do your best work. So I fueled my kind of energy into that creative world with the shows as the sort of the output, if you like, and then that was the sort of the hub of creativity, which we then sort of distilled down into obviously the stores and then also into pop-ups around the world to support it. And we were doing collections that were things like, I don't know if anyone remembers the kind of Kellogg's collections that we did. We called it Counterculture. It was a collection that sort of was celebrating the art of the supermarket, of everyday graphics, and actually how they're so known to us and what they mean to us. And we had this wonderful show where we had 5 conveyor belts going in different ways. All the models came out on the conveyor belts, and in the end, everyone was dancing between the different conveyor belts. Quite a kind of complicated bit of choreography, actually. But we then opened pop-ups. For example, we had what we called the Mini Mart on Mount Street, where we did a rather sort of artistic version of a supermarket with all these beautiful pieces, and then took it to the stores. We launched the sticker collection next. We did a collection that was called Diversion after that, which was inspired by Margaret Calvert, who I'm actually having breakfast with tomorrow. It's such an honour for me. Who was the woman who designed all the road signs in the UK. Who's not really that known. She's the most incredible artist, actually. And the simplicity and the incredible communication of those graphics. And so just the sort of shows were really lovely creative outputs, which was a very exciting way to work. So I was really kind of involved in that.
Amazing. So you're no longer CEO. You've brought a burst of creativity back to Anya Hindmarch. During this time, you've done your first fashion show that you just mentioned. Though I guess at the same time, and you probably won't say this, but I guess the relevancy of that audience was declining, right? High streets, the department stores dying. The people that are sat in those fashion shows are less relevant than they once were before. And I guess moving on to our next moment, you're sat in this environment, and one more, and you decide on a way to solve that problem and I guess take these ideas, these shows, to a much broader audience. What was going on in this picture?
So we were at Paolo Conte. I don't know if you know Paolo Conte is my favourite. I love his music, and he's about 80, and so I think this might have been his last show, although they've been saying that for years. And it's quite lovely, the Royal Festival Hall, because you can actually get a seat in a box for the same price as a normal seat. And I was sitting there, and no one else, it was just my husband and I, and you're allowed to take wine into the box, which is also a really nice thing, so we were having a really nice evening. There had been that horrible spate of terrorism where I think, in Borough Market, that awful thing that had happened very recently, I think the week before. And I was sitting up there looking down from this, with this nice glass of wine in this box, having a nice time, and looking at the completely full to the brim auditorium and thinking, London is incredible. I mean, incredible. This is not just Brits. This is London, it's visitors, it's an incredible, diverse sort of group of people. I love it. And it just was amazing. And I thought that actually the idea of fashion shows, and as you say, the audience we're spending our biggest marketing money to communicate to an audience that was department stores as the distribution mainly, and press, both of which, whilst they will still have an important part in our business, and it will evolve, obviously, but is actually, in a way, they are, to a certain extent, the middlemen. In that, you have the customer and you have the brand, and actually the department store and the press were the middlemen. They were sort of interpreting between the two, and I think that those middlemen are, that's the tricky bit. That's the people whose businesses are reforming, and so I felt actually it was time to really talk directly to the customer. I think that Fashion Week, she says on the board of the British Fashion Council, Fashion Week in some ways can be quite old-fashioned, or the way that we work, that we're bringing out things that are, and we're launching, winter next week in June virtually, and we're bringing out we're showing things on the catwalk that you can't have for 6 months. That's quite a frustrating experience for a customer. So it just was obvious to me that something had to change. And it's so easy to carry on just doing the same thing that you've always done. I think it's incumbent on all of us, sort of business people and creatives, to always, not to just the comfy coat. You've got to kind of keep pushing yourself. And, you look at how Apple has reinvented the music industry. It can happen very quickly. You cannot get complacent. So we thought, I thought when I was sitting there sort of a little bit drunk and half dreaming, that wouldn't it be fun to do something just completely different? So to not do a show, which was quite a big step because we put a huge amount of energy into our shows and we were sort of getting quite known for them. So it was quite hard to pull off that schedule. But to do something for London, actually, as a sort of a love letter to the city. So the first idea, when I was sort of slightly drunk and dreaming, which is a really good way to be creative sometimes, was that wouldn't it be lovely to tie giant helium balloons onto every bridge in London as a surprise to the city on Valentine's Day? Why wouldn't that be fun? Giant balloons. So you just have this lovely moment and they're there and then the next day they're gone. So I started looking into it, but actually every bridge is half owned by one council and half owned by another council. Thought, you know what, that's going to be like really difficult.
Back into politics.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, it almost was. And so then I thought, actually, well, why don't we just have them in different places in London? So I knew the guys who were developing Battersea Power Station, so I called them up saying, look, how about this mad project? And they went, great, let's do it. And I thought, oh, now it's happening. And we sort of rolled and rolled. I mean, it became very, very complicated. So cutting to the end, we did 29 locations over 5 days. It started as a complete surprise to the city on Valentine's Day, and it was a combination of squashed hearts into historic buildings like Wellington Arch and flying helium balloons the size of double-decker buses with very large helium fills that are expensive. So you're very weather dependent. You are dependent on very many different permissions. For example, the project was obviously February the 14th. In December, we hadn't secured the funding nor the locations, and everything was a little bit interdependent. And you had to actually give gain permission or put in a request to Civil Aviation Authority, which is one of the many permissions you had to get, for the exact postcode, which is literally, I think, a metre square. And of course, we didn't know where we were doing them, so it was very hard. So I literally had to just drown Civil Aviation Authority with all these permissions and requests, not knowing where on earth, going, Trafalgar Square, why not? Which corner of Trafalgar Square? I don't know, but we just... So it was really, really complex, and the wind conditions and so on, but it was a lovely project.
And I guess you found a way to get over all those obstacles. So you've stepped away from shows, and now these installations represent not the exclusivity of the fashion show, but inclusivity for the city. You're creating, I guess, in many ways, your very own moments. I guess, first of all, you've sort of explained why with the London Hearts, but why do you think people care about these? Why do you think they connect? Whether it's the Weave project, whether it's the Chubby Cloud, why do people want to be part of these moments?
Well, I think there's a thing going on. I mean, I found myself the other day booking a bread-making course for myself, and I hate cooking, and I'm trying not to eat carbs, so it was a kind of a curious idea. But it's a lifelong battle, trust me. But I think we all want to put down our phones. I think, to the point of burnout, I think it's just hard because, I don't have a separate phone work from personal, so therefore you're kind of having a nice lunch with your kids, and then suddenly you get the email you don't want from Japan that's saying there's a problem, and it kills your lunch. And so, we all want to just find ways to put down our phones and to do things. And I think, apparently you cannot get a pottery course in London for love nor money, apparently. People want to do things and to actually kind of connect back to real things. So I think that, for me, that it just feels right that I'm doing things that are... with the Weave project, it was talking about the product we were launching, which is this woven bag, which was woven into leather, into mesh, and talking about the art of weaving, and then going really deep into the subject, and actually then creating this huge art installation, which then people can climb through, so you can feel quite childlike. So it's just creating those moments that I think give people a bit of a break from what they do, that connect with people a bit more than just probably having those cookie cutter stores. So I'm sort of feeling my way a bit, really. Don't know what I'm doing, but it's...
Back to what you said earlier on with people wanting to connect, wanting to meet with people face to face, and wanting to share these experiences. Back to when you were talking about the store.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there is a real need, and I think so. Whilst we've all gone digital, and there's huge opportunities, and there's obviously huge changes, and some of it's easy, and some of it's not, and some of it's exciting. I think that the sort of byproduct of that is we're all probably doing quite a lot of siloed stuff. We're all sitting in our houses ordering and shopping, and not actually connecting with people. So I think it is really probably a sort of natural response to that. I don't overthink these things in a funny way. I'm quite instinctive with what we do, and so we just sort of follow our nose a bit. But the cloud, for example, the Chubby Cloud was very very much about meditation and about switching off. They actually use, we built the world's largest beanbag, which is what we call this chubby cloud. And it was under this Reuben ceiling talking about this chubby collection we were launching. And they actually use beanbags as a way of calming down people in psychiatric wards. It really is, it's a very lovely, calming thing. I think I needed it probably, probably for me.
But it is interesting with that idea of online, how actually going back to what we said at the very beginning, it comes back to the physical. So moving on to our final moment, where we've got you sat with our mutual friend, Dame Natalie Massenet. What's happening here? Why is this a moment?
So Natalie is, as you know, an incredibly special woman. She's, I think, the most, she's an enthusiast, which is, I'm a great believer in being positive, and she just epitomizes positivity, actually. And I think if you're positive, you can do great things, actually. She's incredible. She and I both have this shared passion for this quite terrible book called, sorry to the authors, but called, I'm forgetting it's being filmed, this is a disaster. Quite obviously inspiring book.
Amazing book, yeah.
That Natalie and I love, just FYI. And it's called Creative Visualization. And very simply, don't read it, because I can tell you that the main message, the spark notes, are that if you work out what you want with your business or with your life, and you commit to it, you kind of say, I want to do X, I want to open that store, I suppose it's what happened when I drew my first shop with my name on it, actually, without me realizing it. So I visualized it, creatively visualized it, and put it in front of your nose and look at it a lot. It is much more likely to happen. That's just a fact. It's proven. They do it with athletes. They say that if you're running a race, and they will make them in their head go through imagining getting to the end, the ticker tape, that feeling of winning, looking up, seeing your time, hearing the crowd, the roar. You open the neural pathways. So when I was very nervous about public speaking, it's that thing of stand on the deck in your head, imagine the faces, see it, believe it, and then you've almost been there. You've almost actually made that happen already. So I believe in that. And this was a dinner at Nat's house in her kitchen. She'll hate me for showing this picture, by the way, which was when I realised that actually I wanted to go back to being CEO and to running the business again myself, which I start tomorrow, actually.
Amazing. Well, congratulations. And on that, Anya, you previously said you hadn't fired yourself soon enough from being CEO. What's made the decision to go back to it?
I think that it's quite hard, I think, sometimes when you bring in big investors and you bring in people. I think that sometimes, depending on who you are, it can absolutely work. And by the way, the people I had were amazing, so this is not a reflection on this, this is a reflection on me. But I think that probably if I leave this business, I would go out completely. I think that having someone else come in and run your baby, it's a bit like your child. You kind of want to do it. Maybe that's, maybe I'm just bossy and controlling, which is probably what my husband would say. But actually, I love leading it, and it's exciting, and I was kind of missing it. So I've taken back that role. And this, I think, last picture, isn't it, is actually a picture which was Margaret Calvert, who I was talking about earlier, is my site heroine. My team gave me very recently, and it is, of course, a woman at work, which is a really nice thing, so I'm going to be putting that on my wall.
Amazing.
And I was visualising putting that on my wall when I had my dinner with Natalie, so it's a nice.
And now it's happened. So finally, Anya, going back to what you just said about visualisation, Anya, I thought I said Natalie then, but finally, Anya, going back to that picture you said of visualisation, and that first picture you drew of that shop as a 16, 17-year-old girl, do you think that girl would be proud of the woman she became?
I hope so. It's funny, isn't it? It's sort of, listen, I'm very far from perfect. I don't want to come across as a really smug individual, but I hope so. And I think it's, funny enough, we all, and perhaps in those times as a woman, have a responsibility to sort of show people that you can do it, and you can have fun, and you can still be kind, which is something I really believe in, and look after your team, and you can actually run a business in a way that actually involves people and includes people, and it is a nice way to work. So I hope so. Yes, I hope so.
So finally, 10 years from now, your final moment that hasn't yet happened, where are you? Who are you with? And who's around you?
God, that's a really tough question. That's mean. Well, I suppose probably it would be the next stage. So obviously I'm going back to this role We've got to turn around a business a little bit, actually, because there's some stuff that needs sorting out, some screws that need tightening. So I want to really kind of get it back licked. I want to look at the model and make sure it's a bit more future-proof, because without a doubt, the old model was probably not the right model for the future. So it would be, I think, getting to the stage where it is a really happy success with a great group of people, my team, who I love dearly. We call them the H family. You know, with my husband there, my real family too. So it will probably be a combination of those things. Maybe the day I retire, I don't know, who knows? But I think we'll have a laugh doing it.
Anya, thank you for sharing your moments with us.